So Helen won what is the equivalent of what you would call American Idol these days.
Right.
In Australia, and she was already a working singer in Australia. She comes from a big family of show business. They were vaudeville performers, her parents.
Okay.
She spent her whole life traveling and doing the circuit. And she really wanted to go to America. And in those days, going to America from Australia was, first of all, very expensive, so she couldn't afford to go. And it was the kind of thing that most Australians didn't do.
Okay.
Now you know a lot of Australians are making that trip over and following their dreams to do show business in America or something artistic. But in those days, nobody really did that from Australia. So it was really important to Helen that she won this contest. If she didn't win the contest, it would actually destroy her professional reputation in Australia. That she was a professional singer that didn't manage to win an amateur contest. So it was a big deal. She packed everything up. She sold everything. She went to New York and was really excited that she had this recording contract. And when she got there, she was essentially told, because you're a woman, we really don't have much use for you. So enjoy the city and go home.
Without any money.
Well,
and have a nice day.
I think they just expected her to go home.
Wow. How did you get into the body of Helen? Like
Get into the body of Helen.
know?
So that was a really big process. You know, it's an amazing opportunity to be given the chance to play such an extraordinary woman. I think she's so inspiring, and going on this journey of making this film and researching her has like deeply changed me. Like she's really so inspiring. So it was a big challenge and big shoes to step into. So I did a lot of reading, first of all, read her book, watched every interview possible, learnt all the interviews off by heart, could still do them for you today. Okay. I watched all of her performance videos. And then I went through, obviously, then looking at the script and sort of we were making a version of her life. Obviously, we were fitting 20 years into an hour and a half movie. So it was a big process of all of that stuff, and it started sort of out as mimicry, you know, of trying to copy endless hours of watching her videos and trying to replicate that within my body. Right. And some of that started off way over the top and slowly sort of found its way into me. I spent a lot of time thinking about her voice. She has, as we're both Australian, but she has a very different voice and a very different pattern to her speech. And it was just a different time. People spoke differently, so that was important. And we also got the great thing of being able to show someone aged 20 years. So it was really important to me to sort of spend a lot of time thinking about how her body shifted in those years and how her voice changed in those years. That was a really fun thing to be able to lean into. I did a lot of work with hair and makeup, and costume were a big part of it too. Like, we spent hours and hours doing costume fittings. Yeah. I had fake teeth in, I had a fake chin, I had like wrinkles, fat suits, we did it all. That was fun, and that really helped find parts of her. Like, sometimes you put on an outfit and go, oh, that's why she stands like that. Or like, oh, her hand always hangs like this because she's always holding a mic cord. Like, there was a whole lot of things that sort of started to find and make sense as we went along that journey. Wow. So I worked with a movement coach a bit and a voice coach, and we sung for hours every day for the weeks leading up to the shoot. And we had an amazing opportunity to have about 4 or 5 weeks of rehearsal time, which is so absurdly rare in film. It was so essential for this. I don't know how I would have done that without that time.
I did meet Jeff, yeah. And every time I would talk to him on the phone, it would be at a minimum of 2 hours. He loves to talk. He loves to tell his story. He loves to go on tangents. He's very charming, very funny, can be very crass at times. Right, of course. But ultimately, I always say he's a sheep in wolf's clothing. He loves his family more than anything, and I think was really rooting for Helen from the very beginning. Wow. So, yeah. He humanized the character a lot once I met him, and we went and got a mani-pedi. He gets a manicure every week since he was 13. So yeah, he's a very interesting guy. I've never met anybody like him.
For the story, to understand the story, you need to really understand why Helen was with him. Yes. And why she was in love with him. Yeah. And I think that Evan captures that really well.
Very well. It's always intimidating taking on a real person, regardless of whether they're alive or gone, because especially someone that had such a presence like Lillian and affected so many people, she knew everyone. Like, the more I researched, I was like, wow, this woman just was the most connected person in New York, basically, and Australia. It's like, it just was far and wide. But I did as much research as I could, and you kind of just try to honor what you know, and the stories that were told about her, and her charisma, I guess. She's a lot cooler than I am. That's what I kept thinking on set. I was like, yes. she's just larger than life and like very cool. And I was like, I don't have this. I need to like find this. But I think with the friendship between Helen and Lillian, I mean, Tilda and I got along really well, and I think that's always really helpful.
Very helpful.
Very helpful. We had like tea and cake parties.
I have to admit, I was a really big fan of Danielle's before I met her. I was obsessed with patty cakes, and I felt a little bit like the relationship of Helen and Lillian in the film was quite similar to also you and me when we first met. I was really nervous.
What? Yeah. But it was kind of beautiful because Lillian came out in her early 20s to New York, didn't know anyone, and made this name for herself and made a life for herself out there. And then I think it's amazing that she took Helen under her wing and helped her get started as well. I think it was beautiful. And I don't know if it was devalued. There's not... You would be the best person to ask that question, answer that question.
Yeah, it was hard, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean...
You spoke to
I think
Helen
what's
most.
so beautiful about the story, and Emma and I spoke about it a lot when we were working on the screenplay, is that their friendship is what created something really powerful and strong in this song, because without Lillian to guide and to push her and to encourage her to really write from her heart, and as an artist, as you know, whatever is authentic is what really resonates for people. So without that, I think the song probably wouldn't exist. And I love the fact that at the core of this movie is a beautiful friendship of two women. But there is a great misunderstanding. And it's a tragedy, but I think that it really stems, as most of these falling outs do, it's from misunderstanding.
Totally.
And there's always two sides to a story, you know, like she has children, she's traveling, and a husband, and this industry is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So, of course, communication is going to be a little more lax.
Yeah, and she also had the same issue with Linda McCartney, right? Like,
She
it
did.
was just...
There are stories about Lillian, and it's... If she loved you, she loved you. If she didn't like you, everyone else knew too.
Oh, I like that about
She was a
her.
strong personality.
She's sassy.
We actually, in a way, have used Helen's story as a vehicle to continue that conversation. I think that's what my comment was inferring before, is that she wrote a song that impacted a generation, and we've taken that, we're sharing her story, we're allowing people to know her name, and people had forgotten about Helen to a large extent. She has a fan club, but she didn't have a broad, people had sort of put her over there. We're trying to put her back in the light, and that light talks to women's representation in music, women's stories being told, and the fact that it's been written by a woman and directed by a woman is really, really important for us. And we hope that the way the story is told is impacted because it's been directed and written by a woman as well. So I think that the film itself is giving you that, I would hope.